The year is 2014, and as a last-ditch attempt to make video games, indie game developer Scott Cawthon makes the groundbreaking horror game Five Nights at Freddy's. Scott's critical and commercial success not only springboarded his own career, but also popularized the game genre Mascot horror. Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF for short, is a series that begins with you playing as a night guard and yeah, pretty much if you're watching this, you know exactly what FNAF is and has become. Anyways, at its inception, it practically had a monopoly on the genre and its viewer base. It captivated just about every branch of gamer. Of course, you all might know, it didn't just stop at being scary. It pulled in the audience by making you ask questions, asking you to dig deeper to understand the story. The surface of malfunctioning killer animatronics works to make the gameplay exactly what it was, but the newspapers and the cams mentioning missing children, the foul smell coming from the animatronics, it alludes to a much more sinister plot happening in the background. Over the course of not even a year, Five Nights at Freddy's already became a series spanning 4 games, expanding on the concept by bringing in new animatronics, the main villain, William Afton, the Happiest Days minigame and ending, the Bite of 83, and an ending that left everyone looking for more. We all know that the series has expanded beyond those 4, but after that, the monopoly it had then was never really the same. It may not always stay as the singularly most popular game in the horror genre afterwards, but every release was still massive. Other mascot horror games began to take the stage as well. Hello Neighbor was an extremely interesting game about finding out your neighbor's secrets, but he learns how you sneak in and prevents you from doing the exact same thing the next time you try to infiltrate. Tattletale taking on the Five Nights idea but putting its own free roam survival twist on it with those cute little Furbies. Even fan games of FNAF found quite a large amount of popularity in that time, One Night at Flumpty's and Five Nights at Candy's being the two standouts at the time to my own memory. Lastly, early in 2017, a new arrival and the topic of this video, Bendy and the Ink Machine, began with the first chapter. Bendy and the Ink Machine, a horror game with an art style that was extremely distinct and gave it a timeless aesthetic. Characters that are reminiscent of the 20s and 30s black and white 2D Disney characters. Jeez, might have to specify 1920s and 30s soon, but regardless. It introduces us to our main character, Henry, who may not talk much but clearly has quite the history with this place we find ourselves in, known as Joey Drew Studios. Hi, I'm Chief. This is the first attempt in a hopeful series where I talk about games I play, giving a little bit of everything about the game as I go about it. I call it Nostalgia Trip. Here, I'll be talking about, of course, Bendy and the Ink Machine. Bendy and the Ink Machine, Chapter 1, titled Moving Pictures, starts off with us reading a message about Joey Drew asking us to come over and take a look at the studio. 30 years have passed since we, Henry Stein, left the studio. As we travel around, one of the first things we might come across is this wide open room that has chains flowing into the black ink abyss below us. Henry mentions power, and we begin a small fetch quest in this very room. And then we use the lever to the right of us to raise the ink machine into view. The weight of this scene absolutely cannot be overstated as an introduction. This grand in scale machine rising from the ink abyss into our view, and then learning that we must turn it on. Oh, I'm in. And so we begin a quest to find the place where we get the ink flowing. And as we continue to explore the studio, the ambience and sound design begin to be flexed to us, with the pages turning and the sound of work being done as we pass our old desk. The bendy cutouts, both the static and the ones that pop up from time to time, leave an impression that he is an incredibly important character, both to this story and to the studio itself. After finding the ink control room, we begin another fetch quest. Surely not something that will feel overused by the end of this game, right? After finding all 6 items, all of which have a sensible reason to be important, the ink, a plush, a record, the wrench, a gear, and an art book. But why must we get these specific items to make the ink start flowing again? That doesn't seem like something designed around an entirely mechanical process. And exactly how we find each of these items is odd. The wrench specifically leaves even more questions as we find it inside of a body. Finally, after completing this second fetch quest and turning on the ink, we must go and explore to find out exactly what we did to that massive machine. But it's boarded up. Odd. Oh god, that's Bendy? We gotta run to the exit. Unfortunately, as we get close to the door, the floorboards below us give out and we fall down. Finding valves along the way, we drain the ink that came with us before finally we find something, a weapon, an axe, and then in front of us is wood. We break down the wood and we enter a room before visions take over our vision and we pass out. Nice try. Beginning chapter 2, called The Old Song, we wake back up and find ourselves in a layer further down in the studio. We wake up to an occult ritualistic symbol on the ground below us and the coffins surrounding us. Perhaps these symbols are what caused those visions we saw earlier. But exiting the room, we walk through what appears to be some sort of maintenance area, and confusion is heard by Henry about this place being bigger than he remembers. But as we continue forward, we find ourselves wading through more ink, and I see a human figure, but completely black, inky, and wearing a mask of bendy. Odd, but it gets stranger. He has a bendy cutout with him and walks into a corner of the room just barely out of our sight before disappearing completely. This corner of the room had no doors, no exit, and it just has presumably the ink cutout he just left for us sitting there. And that's it. In that same room, though, a gate blocks our path and we must backtrack to find switches to open it. After opening the gate, we find a recording studio and some stairs too. We also see stairs with an exit sign on it, but the stairwell is flooded, so we must find out how to drain the ink. By the stairs is a lever, and using the lever opens a different gate, but also introduces us to our first enemy, searchers, as they are called, the basic enemy in this studio. In the next room is the office of one Sammy Lawrence, the music department director, but to the side, I must ask why an infirmary would need to be an animation studio, but I'm sure we'll find out later. On another fetch quest, where we find some keys, we find a tape by Sammy Lawrence talking about an order of instruments to play to get into his little sanctuary. We go back into the studio, turn on the projector, head down to the room, play the instruments in the order, and the sanctuary will unlock for us. In the sanctuary is a valve that we have to turn on. We turn. After turning it, we get a little jump scare by a bendy cutout on the way out of his sanctuary and encounter more searchers as that inky figure watches us from an area that we can't access but looks right next to the projector area. Turns out, though, we need another valve to get to Sammy's office. Thankfully, the infirmary's open and it leads directly to a maintenance area with a ton of ink on the ground. There's no way that's normal, right? Secondarily, a searcher stole our valve, so we need to get into that maintenance shaft area. Killing him by dropping a crate of boxes on him, kind of funny, and the searcher was unique because he had a hat. Turning the valve, we finally get into Sammy's office, getting the pump control turned on and heading on over to the stairs. Oh, of course, that man knocked me out and tied me up. Obviously, he's obsessed with Bendy. Oh, it's Sammy. Yeah, that tracks. Sammy leaves us to die by Bendy, but Bendy went after him. That's ironic. Getting rid of our binds and snagging the axe to defeat the searchers, and we break another way out. Bendy, but again, we gotta run, and we get to a room and lock the door so he can't take us out. A cutscene starts. A can rolls from behind the corner, and Boris, I didn't think you'd be alive. We grabbed a wrench from your chest earlier. But hey, you're not attacking me. I would love an ally. Chapter 3, titled Rise and Fall, starts us off in our new pal Boris's room. We make him some soup, get out of the room with a flashlight, and lead our way into the main hall of some place called Heavenly Toys. Henry doesn't know anything about this, which is more odd, but continuing on, we begin to hear a humming sound fade in and then fade back out. Beyond that is a room with a pretty simple puzzle, and we find a tape with Jacksepticeye? Whoa, I forgot that he was in the game. I love that. Now, introducing ourselves to just what that hum was. Apologies. We get jump scared by Alice, and now we begin our time under Alice Angel, being her personal little errand boy. This deformed version of Alice looks something surgically put together, like a Frankenstein's monster, obviously. Meeting back up with Boris just beyond that room, we complete another little puzzle and open up a room with an elevator. This is the main part of Chapter 3, with multiple different fetch. Ugh, goody. But this time, a fun twist was put onto them, and we'll get into that later. We head towards Alice's lair first and stumble. Oh my gosh. Alice is a psychopath. She is so obsessed with beauty. She'll kill and dissect anything if it helps her get closer to her perfect look. Dead bodies, mangled corpses, other bisected Borises, a room full of. She's awful. And she wants Boris too. The Boris we follow and are with. Our only ally in this weirdly huge studio. She even tortures a fellow Butcher Gang fellow right in front of us. The Butcher Gang being much healthier enemies than the Searchers, and we'll see more of them continuing on. But after sending us on our merry way, first it's a quest to collect gears on level K. Nothing major of note happened here, but we are now sent to get this Think Ink on level 11. And here is where I saw these familiar moving stains on the walls. It's reminiscent of those Bendy. He's here. Oh my goodness. And it's not a chase sequence. Oh, thank gosh. I'm so glad that they mixed it up here. This adds so much more tension to the fetch quest and an even greater threat for Bendy himself, as he's not just this monster we only see once each chapter for an ending chase sequence. And the way you deal with him is to hide. You don't fight him, and he kills you in one hit if you get too close before you hide. These little porta potty looking things called little miracles were scattered across the setting of chapter 3. We hide inside those to lose both his aggro and wait for him to wander away. But just know that until the animation is completed, you are not safe from Bendy's wrath, and he can kill you during the animation in which you are hiding from him. Finally, when we're finding the last of that thick ink we need, we get introduced to another major boss in a similar vein to the ink demon, Bendy. We call him the projectionist. We see him walk past us behind some glass. The third on the list are these power cores on level P. They're hidden behind these valve puzzles, and you need to equalize the like ink in the columns that the valves are connected to. Getting them all to an equal level at some mid region gives you the power core hidden behind it. The ink demon, though, is still very much a threat here, and during the puzzle, he can spawn. It feels pretty close to you because of how much smaller and more cramped level P is compared to the longer areas of level K, level 11, level 9, all of that. And that makes him appear in places more near you, more unexpectedly, and he's a much bigger threat, and it's more tense because of that fact. Finally, we finish the third task and we are given an axe. Thank you. A plunger and a big needle did not give the same security as that trusty axe we got back in chapter 1. We are to become a tool for Alice to vent her anger on the bendy cutouts, though we need to be cautious. As completing this task, the ink demon will automatically spawn in right close to us. So as soon as you kill the last bendy cutout, you need to hop right into one of those little miracles. Heading back and dealing with some intruding Butcher gang members and searchers, our fifth and final task begins for this chapter, and we're to fetch hearts in the flooded depths of level 14. We encounter the projectionist once again, and he works similar to Bendy, but you can take 2 hits from him before dying, and he, instead of spawning in and despawning and the ink around him making it obvious when he's here, that isn't as present. Finding the final of the 5 hearts on that floor and heading back to Alice, we deliver it, and she says we're allowed to leave through the elevator. On our way up, she monologues and she backstabs us. Of course, our elevator goes crashing down into an even further level in the studio, beyond even level 14 in the bottom, and we pass out. In between blinks, we watch as Boris gets taken by Alice, and so ends chapter 3. Notably, this chapter felt the longest and took the most time for me to complete. Even with that, this might be my favorite chapter in Bendy and the Ink Machine. Moving on to chapter 4, titled Colossal Wonders, we find ourselves even further down in the studio, if that is even where we are anymore. Exploring around, we find out we are at level S. Odd. R&D? We're an animation studio in the 30s now. So, why? Well, we need to get access into the archives, so that doesn't really matter all too much to us now. Beyond the door to the archives is a place that barely resembles one with the books, but whatever, you know? A little book puzzle later, and we arrive in a mine shaft. Very much not an archive area, but hey, whatever. We've been through so much absurd stuff, this is nothing. Remember that thick ink from the last chapter? Yes? Perfect. We can actually use it here too. You can use it to make anything. As long as these little gent machines say it can be made, that is, that's actually really neat and adds to why ink is so important here. It can literally make anything if you have the right machine to make it, that is. Heading further in, we head up some stairs and find ourselves in a new area with these talking searchers. No, not actually. Not searchers. Lost ones, as I found out that they're called. We get around them and we hop into a vent, walk through that. Oh, penny jump scare! Oh my goodness. That's kind of a first, really. Nicely timed so late in the game. Well done. He's seemingly not a threat, but still a nice jump scare. Afterwards, we get introduced to one Bertram Piedmont, an architect of some kind. We learned he worked on something for Joey. Wonder why he was introduced so late to us, but I'm sure we'll find out later. Well, even further beyond, in Storage 9, a place called Bendy Land. Oh, my apologies. Bendy Hell. Why though? Whatever. We found out what Bertram was working on, and some carnival games later, we get to begin opening our path to Boris. The first puzzle is those carnival games. The second puzzle is a pacifist's wet dream, as we need to stealth, distract, and skirt by those butcher gang members to unlock lever 2. Or instead of doing all that, you can kind of just run past them, but pish posh. The third puzzle The projectionist is back. You know what? I can live with that. I like that. I love the projectionist. But a little skirting around him and opening level 3 later, and he sees me leaving. Uh-oh. Whatever. Thankfully, there's this little miracle station just upside up those stairs, and he still sees me in the little miracle. Am I gonna die? Oh my goodness. Bendy with the metal chair. Whoa. Hi, Bendy. Please ignore me. That could have gone really bad. I love that though. Adds to the supremacy of Bendy in this place. The final door before the rescue mission begins. Oh, Bertram is he's still alive. Oh, he's the carnival ride. It's wow, that's cool. All right, well, thankfully this mini boss isn't too hard. If you grab the axe, that is. God, I'm blind. I spent like 4 minutes in this mini boss just because I couldn't see that the axe was inside the desk where the tape was found. This is like the third time in this game as well where I missed the axe or I missed something very obvious. I just might be the single most blind gamer ever. Thankfully, besides that little kerfluffle with my eyes being bad, Bertram isn't too hard to defeat, and taking him out lets us open the haunted house. Time to go rescue Boris. Okay, one long ride later, and oh, oh no, 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 no. What did they do to you, Boris? I'm sorry. I was too late. I guess we have to defeat him, our only ally in this hellscape of a world. But funnily enough, he's not too hard early either. The main difficulty I came across was from getting bored and dying to the cabs at the very end. And getting this specifically was the only major glitch I found where you get stuck in the death screen. You can't press anything and it doesn't send you back out. You can't interact, you can't fix anything. So you have to Alt F4 the game for each death of this fight when you die in phase 3. It's not great, but I don't mind. The ride wasn't too bad, and the fight itself, outside of being a little long, not bad. Defeating Boris called Brute Boris for obvious visual reasons. Alice herself comes down to kill us because she can't leave us alive, but just as she was about to get us, she gets stabbed in the back. Ah, wait, Alice? Boris? What in the world? The fifth and final chapter, sensibly called The Last Reel, has us back in the hideout of this Alice and the new Boris, who Alice says he responds most to Tom, so that's what I'll be referring to him as from now on. He also has this really cool looking mechanical exo arm on him, and he clearly doesn't like us. To be fair, we did kill, well, him not too long ago, so his distaste makes sense. Alice reveals to us a new mechanic called invisible ink, which can be revealed through this scrying glass contraption she found and then fashioned into what she gave us now. Tom doesn't trust us, but Alice believes that we are their only hope in getting out of whatever this place is. At this point, it's become clear to us that this place is not the studio that we worked in, or if it is, it's corrupted well beyond recognition at the point where we are now. Progressing the story, Tom accidentally leads the Ink Demon to this hideout as he got found on a scouting mission and had to run away back to the hideout. They decide to leave us for dead, though. Um, But with that new invisible ink glass, we learn of a secret area which houses a toilet, and the toilet holds a pipe which we can use to break our way out of there. Walking around, we make our way to a barge, and heading onto that and getting into the water, this ink river has a huge bendy hand on it, and every so often our barge will get clogged with with ink, so the hand slowly catches back up to us. The barge leads us to another area, a little lost one's cove kind of thing. It's really quaint and kind of cool, and is the hideout of, oh, hell yeah, he's back. Sammy! Now is a mini boss here, though. We take him out by knocking the bendy cut off out of him, and he grabs us. During his monologue, Tom, that's odd, starts to creep up from behind him, and just before he can take us out, Tom whacks Sammy and hits the axe right into his head, taking him out for good. Not certain how they escaped the ink demon, but glad he was able to return. After reuniting with our friends, though, even Tom's cool with us now. He gave us our axe, and we fought off hordes of searchers and lost ones before heading off, and of course the ground below us gives out. A maze with butcher gangs being used to cover it as the threats prevent us from getting the ink we need to make the pipes to drain the room towards the vault. Figuring out the maze layout was the hard part, and you can, if you just want to, sprint around them without too much issue, unlike the projectionist and Bendy. I believe Bendy can also show up here, as his stains did for me, but I did not actually see him during that part, and I feel it only happened because I took forever to get the layout of this little maze down, and I listened to all of the tapes in the maze. Draining the next path leads us towards the vault, which was supposed to house something, but Bendy stole it. Alice and Tom meet us again, and we are about to be given a new fetch. Never mind, Tom. I'm so sorry for ever doubting you. You're my goat. Thank you. Bashing open the doorway to the path, we find the ink machine, or this huge version of it, as the ink machine is descending onto it. Huh, that's odd. But we know where to go next, and because of the ink lake around it, Alice and Tom can no longer follow us. Taking our final trek back to being solo once again, like we always seem to end up to be, we find ourselves in Bendy's lair, with his chair, a tape, and a pre-recorded message from Joey to us. We know now how to end this. At least that's what we believe to be the way to end all this. Joey tells us that Bendy's never seen the end, and that's how we win, by playing the final tape roll on the projectors, sensibly titled The End. Before we can though, Bendy transforms into a monster and sends us flying through a wall, initiating a new style of boss fight. Similar to the mazes before, Bendy is on the hunt for us, running into pattern in the maze room. He runs through the walls, disappearing into them, and then goes into a new one running out. Hugging the walls, though, allows us to live and minimize the risk of dying, with four levers around the room to complete this phase. Honestly, not too difficult, but the second phase, similar to how I thought the first phase of Boris would actually go, instead of us taking him out, it's us forcing him to run into something in his path that would harm him. Four large pillars of flowing ink. You have to get him to scream at you and charge before hiding behind one. So there is still a bit of nuance, but thankfully not too hard nor too easy. After Benny smashes all four pillars of ink, the opening body to the room we started this boss opens once again, and we play the tape once and for all, defeating Bendy. Or do we? It doesn't seem that way. Our view changes and we're in someone's house, someone's home. That someone, walking around a bit, is Joey Drew. And it is revealed that this whole thing is a cycle of his creation that we got trapped in. One he used to keep that monster at bay to some degree, and to keep his hopes and aspirations alive in the same vein. We didn't actually enter Joey Drew's studios, but got caught in what was called the cycle. And this is the ending of Bendy and the Ink Machine. Overall, I really liked the game. Across 5 chapters, it took me about 4 hours of stream time, and my save slot was just over 3.5 hours. So, in terms of the time I invested into playing this game and completing it, it really isn't that bad. Now, what do I have to say about the game itself? Oh, goody. I loved the art direction, the ambience, the sound design. The those things are probably the absolute standouts and are what sets Bendy apart from the other games in the genre. It has a uniqueness that isn't really being replicated by any other game besides its own sequel. And even in that sequel, it's not the same implementation of those same ideas. And I would highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't played it. If you ever find it on sale, get it. As long as you are interested in playing horror games at all, this is one of those that I would push towards anyone always. Now, gameplay wise, they did a lot to spice it up as things went on. When I first played, I thought I would get tired of the consistent fetch quests or the chases at the very end of each chapter, but I didn't actually mind it. The third chapter being the longest and having the most of the fetch quests and similar quests of those ilk was probably the most fun chapter to me because of how each part of the quest line was initiated and the fact that the ink demon became a wandering threat that may spawn in near you at any time. It added so much to what could have been an incredibly stale part of the game. And it just wasn't. I think they absolutely nailed that part too. Now, and the projectionist being introduced as an active wandering threat in a similar vein to Bendy, but working in a different way, it all works. It spices up the gameplay and it makes the map feel so much more alive, even though there's really not that many people in it most of the time. And speaking of the map design and the setting itself really do heavy lifting. I- The amount of just visually stunning moments you have while playing the game will it's crazy. It's insane how often and my goodness, the game is beautiful. I cannot say that enough. I'm sorry. And now combat, it's definitely there. It felt like more it was tacked on to add a self-preservation method into the game instead of the game being designed with combat as a major focus. The game clearly wasn't huge on it anyways, though, as combat wasn't a thing at all in Chapter 1. The closest we get to that is having the axe and cutting some wood. And we didn't have bosses or mini bosses until Chapter 4. But it's a very serviceable combat system that works because of its simplicity instead of in spite of it, as we don't feel like some trained fighter. We don't feel like someone who's trained to take on this challenge. We feel like an older animator. We're not too fast, we're not too strong, we don't wield the weapons, the swords, the axe, the pipe wrenches. We don't wield any of those in these much more uh, advanced ways. We are very hack, hack, hack. We are hardly anything beyond just the attack, and I think that works for itself instead of the opposite. And the story, honestly, in terms of flow, okay, to preface, I think I'm a bit weird. Pacing for almost every single show, game, or movie I play or watch, all of that, it always feels like everything happens too fast. Whenever there is development or progression between characters, like their trust has gone on, or the character development of how they change as a person, those always feel really out of left field for me. And I think this game has a similar problem there, specifically in chapter 5 with like Alice's change from why are you here at the very start to you might just be the hope we were looking for to stop this nonsense. that change for us is within a few minutes. Obviously, in game, it might be a couple of hours or even days at that point, but it still doesn't feel like a very sensible and quick change. But to be fair, it kind of had to be like that, as we only get introduced to these characters at the end of chapter 4, and we only interact with them in chapter 5, which is the finale. Even so, though, I would have liked like a moment, maybe while we were going through that ink river, where we meet back up with them and help them escape the giant bendy hand or something, like their barge gets stuck and we unclog it for them, or they hop onto our barge and we continue on. Beyond that, though, being literally my only gripe with the story, I love just about every single human character in the tapes. Wally, oh my god, I loved Wally. He was so fun to listen to and hear about. Sammy always being that crazy fellow, even before he was turned. Susie's descent into what I describe as Alice-ness. Norman the projectionist, and that introducing, well, the projectionist. Um, our Henry's discontent with Joey himself and his huge scoped fantasies, Bertram's introductions, his malcontent with Joey, and his ego itself. And when Joey asks you to end this, to play the ending, the last reel, it was so well done. Oh my goodness, the voice acting is great. Every single major character's voice fits so well with the times and how we hear it, and you just can't help but fall in love with these characters, even though you never see their face. The Ink Demon, being almost completely untouched for its origins, besides being one of the first experiments for the ink machine, and it being a constant prowling around, the multiple Borises, the Searchers, Lost Ones, Butcher Gang, the two Alices being the only Inkies who can talk in the entire game. The questions that this game leaves are not necessarily like the most important. Like the cycle is almost certainly the most important thing that this game gives to us and answers, but the fact that all of these questions remained unanswered, it leaves so much for you to continue thinking about, and it keeps Bendy in your mind. Like, obviously the searchers are most likely the ones made from the machine, but they are the ones without souls, as we hear from one of the tapes. But are the lost ones the ones standing? Are those people with souls? Or are the Butcher Gang and only the characters who are very visibly not only ink, are they the ones who have souls and are the lowest of the soulful creations of the ink machine? But what makes them different from the many Borises or Tom? And why do we have two Alices? And all of this and more you can continue to think about. And the only thing that limits the ability to find an answer for yourself is your own mind. And I could talk about this game for hours. I mean, I'm already halfway there. To wrap things up, Bendy and the Ink Machine captured audiences all around with its unique art style and a setting of a classic animation studio gone wrong, garnering millions and millions of views across dozens of channels and becoming a pillar of the mascot horror genre. In the modern era of mascot horror, where some games just can't seem to find an ending, especially one that satisfies the audience, Bendy already set the standard for that very thing, ending in 5 chapters and in a way that makes sense in the world and satisfies the audience. The Meatly and Joey Drew Studio. Uh, well, you know what? It's got a nice ring to it. Fair enough. Joey Drew Studios. You made a game and it worked oh so well. You deserve all the praise in the world for the game you made and more. Again, I am Chief. If you like this video and you've gotten this far, make sure to leave a like. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.